There have been plenty of talented NBA players who have worn the same number throughout history, so how do we pick who's the best at each? In this video, we'll be going through a bunch of the controversial jersey numbers from NBA history and picking the best player at each one. And yes, we will be picking who's the GOAT at number 23, so make sure to watch it fully through. We're going to start at number 0 since 00 is easily Robert Parrish, so let's talk about it. I honestly want to mention Jason Tatum really quick because even though he's not our choice, there's a slight chance he becomes the best number 0 ever. He already won a championship, has a bunch of accolades, and is only 26, so make sure to keep your eyes on him. Damian Lillard also wears number 0, so there's some more competition for the spot. He's one of the clutchest players ever and probably a top 10 3-point shooter the game has ever seen, so he's definitely up there. Before now, I'm going to stick with Mr. Triple-Double himself, Russell Westbrook. Fans try and disrespect him now by calling him different names, but in his prime, Westbrook was an absolute demon who struck fear in the hearts of the defense. The number 1 is a popular jersey number because of what it represents, and of course a bunch of players have worn it. You have guys like Penny Hardaway and Derrick Rose, who are some of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history. And then there's Tracy McGrady and Amari Stoudemire who wore number 1, but at the end of the day, the Big O wore it with the Bucks, and we can't argue with that. He was the first player to ever average a triple-double for a full season and won the MVP back in 1963. Some people might argue that because his best years weren't with the number 1 that it shouldn't count, and if that's the case, I picked Tracy McGrady in his place. But since we have to make a definite decision, give me the original Mr. Triple-Double. Moses Malone and Alex English is some fair competition for the number 2, but the only right answer is Kawhi Leonard. He's won 2 finals MVPs with different teams, and he's legitimately one of the best defenders ever, so let's keep moving. I'm not gonna lie, the number 3 is tough to pick, and it's really a 3-man race between 3 different guards. We have Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, and Allen Iverson as guys who wear number 3, and I don't know who to choose. I'm gonna eliminate Chris Paul because even though he's one of the best point guards to ever play the game, I take both guys over him in this scenario. And some people might disagree with this, but I'm actually gonna take the Flash for the best number 3 in NBA history. Look, AI was amazing and he changed the game forever, but when you look at their head-to-head accolades, Wade is definitely the choice. He has more All-Star selections, more championships, more finals MVPs, and he was a better overall defender. They're both phenomenal, but only one can be chosen, and it's D Wade. The best number 4 in the NBA has an older crowd between guys like Sidney Moncrief, Joe Dumars, and Chris Webber, but the pick here is Dolph Schayes. You may not be familiar with his game, but he was a 12-time All-Star in the 50s, and that's that. Jason Kidd wore number 5 for a long time, and he was an awesome player that everybody should remember. But at the end of the day, the number 5 belongs to Kevin Garnett with the Boston Celtics. I know his prime was with the Timberwolves, and he wore number 21, but he wore number 5 long enough to be in consideration. He was a perfect player for the Celtics in the late 2000s, and it resulted in the iconic championship back in 2008. It's really tough to rank all-time jersey numbers because people have switched and worn other numbers, but I don't want to give excuses, so make sure to roast us in the comments. The jersey number 6 is stacked, but realistically, we have a 2-man race. Dr. J is one of the best players ever, and I couldn't fly past him without giving a shout out, but there's 2 guys who are better. And of course, that's LeBron James and Bill Russell. I don't have to say anything about LeBron because everyone knows how dominant he was with the Miami Heat, but we all know that it's Bill Russell's number. Russell won 11 rings and has one of the most storied basketball careers ever, so of course he's our pick, and rest in peace to a true GOAT. LeBron does have another number coming up that he could claim, so make sure to keep watching the video. We could speed it up for the next couple of numbers because the best number 7 in NBA history is Carmelo Anthony over Pete Maravich. 8 is of course Kobe Bryant, one of the only guys to have a chance at 2 different jersey numbers on this list. Bob Pettit wore number 9, and he was an all-star all 11 years he played in the NBA, so he gets the nod. And then number 10 gets a little tougher because we have Walt Frazier versus Dennis Rodman. I'm gonna make this simple and possibly hand out a hot take, but give me Frazier over Rodman. The Worm was an animal on the glass and one of the best defenders we've ever seen, but his offense was so limited I have to lean the other way. Frazier could give you 23 a night, and he made a bunch of all defensive teams, so that's the pick. We have another easy pick for jersey number 11, and that's Isaiah Thomas, not the one from the Celtics a couple years back. If you never watched Isaiah Thomas highlights from the Pistons, make sure to go check that out when you get a chance. Dwight Howard wore number 12, and he's the only player to ever win 3 straight Defensive Player of the Years, but at the end of the day, I'll pick John Stockton for this one. He has the most assists in NBA history, and the only reason he doesn't have a ring is because of Michael Jordan. James Harden was a beast with Houston, and if he had some more team success, there's a slight chance he could be in contention for the number 13. I'm also going to rule out Steve Nash because even though he's a 2-time MVP and one of the greatest point guards ever, Wilt Chamberlain has to be the selection. Chamberlain really put up video game numbers throughout his career, and he's one of the guys that I think would translate perfectly to today's game. And honestly, I need you guys to leave a comment on whether or not the 100-point game actually happened because some people say it didn't. We're going to give Oscar Robertson number 14 along with number 1 because he was that good, so sorry T-Mac. Even though this guy is still playing, I'm giving the best number 15 in NBA history to Nikola Jokic. He has won 3 out of the last 4 MVPs, and for the past couple of years, he averaged a near triple-double. Jokic haters might be mad about this one, but he's already that good. Jerry Lucas is the best number 16. Number 17 is my guy John Havlicek, who won a bunch of championships. Dave Cohen's is 18. Willis Reed gets the nod at 19. And then the number 20 gets a little more controversial because Ray Allen wore it with the Celtics, and we all know though, he was a bucket. And Manu Ginobili is one of the best six men of all time who's known for wearing the number 20. But it's gotta go to the glove, Gary Payton, one of the best guard defenders in NBA history. He had everyone in a chokehold on offense, and when guards saw that he was their matchup, they knew they were probably giving the ball up. Another tough number to pick is 21 because Kevin Garnett wore it with the Timberwolves when he was dominant, and Dominique Wilkins was insanely athletic with a great scoring upside. Then there's Joel Embiid, who won an MVP recently, and while he hasn't had much postseason success, a deep playoff run with a new roster could change that. But there was never a question for 21 because Tim Duncan wore the number throughout his entire career, and he's one of the most underrated players ever. He could get it done on both sides of the ball, and if you don't have him in your top 10 players ever, you might not know ball. Elgin Baylor versus Clyde Drexler is the argument for number 22, and this is a little tougher than you think. I'm gonna take Elgin Baylor because he was an MVP candidate every year and put up some crazy scoring numbers. But Drexler was a bucket too, and I don't want people to forget that. We're gonna save number 23 for a little later in the video because, as you know, that's the big debate, but don't worry, it'll come up soon. But number 24 is easily Kobe Bean Bryant, and I find it crazy that he had two Hall of Fame careers. They just happened with two different numbers. When he was number 8, he was a bit more athletic, but I think number 24 is where we saw the Black Mamba at his best. He was a smarter player and won 2 rings without Shaquille O'Neal, so honestly, I think this was the best version of Kobe. Now that we got up to number 24, let's skip around a bit and find some of the most controversial numbers in NBA history. Number 34 is probably the second hardest on this list, and let me rip off some names for who wore it. Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, Paul Pierce, and even a new guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. This is a stacked group of players who all dominated inside the paint, but if we can only choose one, I'm gonna break it down to Hakeem versus Shaq. Hakeem did beat Shaq in the finals, but at the end of the day, the Diesel has to be the pick because of his dominance with the Los Angeles Lakers. Literally no one could guard him, and I know the same goes for Olajuwon, but I think pretty much everyone would agree with this pick. Shaq also wore the number 32, but he's not the choice for this one. Karl Malone wore it, and he was one of the best players in the league for his era, but it's not going to be him either, because Magic Johnson is the guy. People don't talk about the fact that Magic Johnson may be the biggest what if ever if he never had to leave basketball. He left the NBA at 31 years old with 12 All-Star appearances and 5 rings, so imagine he stayed for even another 5 years. He'd have at least 5 more All-Star appearances, and honestly, maybe he'd be in the GOAT debate. We're bouncing around a bit here because I didn't realize that even though 33 is undoubtedly Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, there's some other greats who wore the number. Larry Bird is a top 10 player of all time and donned the number 33 throughout his career, so we gotta mention him. Many players call him the greatest trash talker in NBA history, and his drive to win was second to none. And his rivalry with Magic Johnson was awesome. Scottie Pippen also wore number 33, and even though he isn't on the same tier as those guys, he's one of the best players to ever step on the court. Kareem is the obvious choice, but still, we gotta give respect to the other guys. I really didn't know anyone wore the number 99, but George Mikan is one of the NBA pioneers, and he wore it, so I gotta shout him out. There's only been 9 other players in the history of the NBA who have worn it, and one of them is Darko Milicic, and he's the bust of the 2003 NBA draft, so yeah, he doesn't have much competition. Luka Doncic is already easily the best 77 in NBA history, and I thought I'd point that out. And then the last one to talk about before we decide who the best number 23 in NBA history is would be number 41. Dirk Nowitzki has it on lockdown, but Wes Unseld won the MVP as a rookie, so he deserves a shout out too. Rest in peace to another legend. Finally, we can't dodge it any longer, and we have to talk about the best number 23, and it's down to LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. This debate has been going on for years now, really ever since LeBron came back from a 3-1 deficit in the 2016 NBA Finals. On one side, Jordan is 6-0 in the finals with an impressive resume of stats and accolades to back up his GOAT claim. He has iconic moment after iconic moment for highlight watchers to check out today, and when it came down to crunch time, he was always dependable. He's a 5-time MVP, 14-time All-Star, 1-time Defensive Player of the Year, and has multiple All-NBA teams. But then you have LeBron, a guy who just won the Olympics MVP at age 39. He has 4 championships, 4 MVPs, he's a 20-time All-Star, and has a couple of All-Defense selections. Oh, and he's the NBA's all-time leading scorer. It really is a 1A, 1B situation at this point because LeBron's longevity is unheard of, but so is Jordan's dominance and 6-0 finals record. But if we gotta go with one, I'm gonna have to bring out the drum roll. It's gonna be LeBron James. Look, he's gonna play for another 2 to 3 years and further distance himself on the all-time scoring list, while racking up more All-Star and All-NBA teams, so this is a bit of a projection pick as well. I know Jordan fans are gonna be mad at that, so make sure to roast us in the comments, and click on the screen for more basketball content.